I've been singing and speaking, since since the very same time in my life. So, and then now I have an 18-month-old son, so I'm kind of reliving his growth and development, reliving my own through him. So I can see that it's everything is becomes a song. When you're learning how to speak, you learn your ABCs, and that's a song. And you can actually end up singing everything that you say when you're that little, just to kind of get it in your head, and it implants in a different way. And so I think for me, it was always just in my blood and in my surroundings, and it might have just been something that was a hobby that I liked to do, that just felt good. And then at a certain time, maybe junior high, high school, early teens, I realized that it was something that I wanted to actually pursue as a career. Oh, first, that could have been, early musicals, like Julie Andrews, I think. Um, that was the first love. My grandmother would play musicals all the time, and Sound of Music was one of my sister and my favorite. So we would, sing along to her, and just she's a great one to just learn to imitate. Just such a pure voice. But yeah, I think musicals was probably um, the first love. And then I got a little, as we got older, even not even a teenager, but still early years. Growing up in the '80s, it was all kinds of pop music. So it was probably different pop singers that I'd hear on the radio. But and jazz I didn't really listen to jazz until I was a teenager. So then that came later. But yeah, Julie Andrews, I think, was probably one of the earliest influences. I'll start with that end of that question. Yeah, what makes what I do jazz? I think it's because it's rooted in that tradition somewhere. Um, I studied jazz when I was in high school, and then continued that study at in college at UCLA. And then that opened up, though, immediately, that the department I was in was the ethnomusicology department. So it's world music study, and jazz became kind of a specialization within that major. So even at that time, it was never that the jazz tradition was that strict. There was always some broadness, to include other kinds of music. So I think it could be considered jazz, but I'm also okay with it not being considered jazz, because there's definitely much more traditional sounding jazz than what I produce. And even um, lately, it could be kind of maybe jazz harmony, jazz aesthetics, but the actual swing feel is not really there. So if that defines what jazz is, then I don't fit in that category. So I'll leave it up to other people to define it and put it in a genre. But jazz study was definitely in my background, so it's in there somewhere. All I can do is just produce, and all I have done is just produce music that is honest to me, and my where I've come from, and what I feel, and what I love. And um, I've just tried to be the most pure and genuine in my sound, and in the musical sounds that surround me. So there's many different influences there, many different genres you could categorize it into. But um, to me, it was realizing that I didn't have to sound like anyone else. I didn't have to imitate anyone else. It was really just trying to find that most pure, honest voice, and then developing the repertoire from there. So honesty is probably the biggest word that I would use to describe what I do in my sound, and what I love to hear in other artists as well. I think it just has to, speak to me in some way, at some level. So it could be that if I wanted to include another song that I did not write, it could be that there's just something so lush and beautiful about the melody or the harmony, or maybe lyrically, it's such a meaningful song, and I can relate to it myself. It at this point, every song that I would choose to include, I do have to make sure that it is completely something that I can relate to, that taps into something in my life. So if lyrically it's just I'm not connected to it, I might not sing it. If it's up to me, I'll in other projects I'll sing all kinds of of songs. But in my own set, I just try to make sure that it's something that I can really connect with, and I can do the work in that connection, and hoping that other people as listeners can hear and feel that there's something deeper going on than just a surface level, musical connection. There's the emotional connection. There's the spiritual connection too, more than just technique. Well, I won't say one of my own because that's not fair, I think. But um, well, I just some standards. I love just to include, standards, jazz standards in the repertoire. And I just had a gig last month with Taylor Eichste, the pianist, and we played some duo. And one of the pieces that's so beautiful that I love to sing with him is "Spring Is Here." I think that's a really profound melody, harmony, and lyric is just so deeply, it kind of stretches out this certain moment of sadness and turns it into something poetic. And I think that's a real gift if you're able to do that with something really beautiful or something tragic. Anything can be turned into poetry, into art. So that definitely holds as one of my favorite lyrics. I loved being at UCLA and studying ethnomusicology. It's I think in short, it just really opened up my ears to you end up in those 4 years, hearing music from all over the world and being a really good listener, and learning how to use your ear in a different way and kind of pick apart what are you hearing, and what's the context of the music in the culture that you're listening to. So it's a short time to really get deeply involved in each culture's music, but it really just opened my ears to knowing that it was possible to collaborate with other people that might be a master in that music. It doesn't mean that I'm become a master in that music in that short amount of time, but let's say it might have opened my ears to then when I later met Lionel Lueke, who's from Benin, West Africa, hearing him play his music and jazz and anything else that he plays so well, and thinking like, oh, maybe there's a way that we can collaborate and play this together and kind of turn our sound, turn it into something else. And it doesn't have to be defined as one thing or another, but the collaboration and the openness to allowing that to go wherever it's going to go. So I think it just opened up my ears to letting everything in. Yeah, I mean, I'll start by saying I think I use my voice in speaking and singing in a pretty gentle way. So I never push my voice, whether it be speaking, it's pretty quiet, it's pretty minimal, or in song, I'll kind of stretch it out and go to my limits, but it's never straining. So that helps, to not have to have like this big up and down wave of having to recover after a gig or really warm up a lot and develop. I kind of there's different warm up, exercises that I might do. And sometimes I don't even have time to do that, I'll be honest. I'll just think, okay, let's just get into the right mental state before this gig. Maybe a few of these and humming, and just use that first song as the warm up into the piece. So it's kind of a blessing and a curse when you have a voice that you can kind of get away with just using, in a pretty gentle way all the time, because it means that if I don't have time to warm up, I'll be okay. It's not like if I played a trumpet or if I was an opera singer where it's like, no, you can really hear if they don't practice and warm up before. So it would definitely help to do more of that, but I can. I like to share that because it's honest, and I think there's other singers that can relate to that where um, it's a really singers are all different and we all use our voices in different ways. So you can almost hear the melodic nature of someone's voice when they speak. So if I really think about what pitches I'm using and it's like you're always somewhat, you're always singing. Um, so all of that being said, of course, if there's something that's really challenging and more difficult, definitely spending the time to warm up and practice and get those parts all together is absolutely necessary. But at this point, with a little boy running around, and definitely the time is very precious if it's at all that I have to myself. You just you find a way to make it work. It's just caused it to kind of be on the back burner a little bit, to slow down, and my main focus is just to be a mom and to be a very present one, and we've definitely have there's things still brewing. There's a album with Tillery, with Rebecca Martin and Becca Stevens, that we just finished mastering, so there should be news about when that will be released very soon. And I have a gig with Alan Hampton tomorrow at Rockwood. So there's projects, singing with Taylor Ikesty, singing with my own group, and so the touring has been more minimal, but still happening. There's different kind of sprinklings of shows. But it really it becomes the focus, and the priority is my son, and thinking, okay, if we go away, and can we all go together? Is it something that's comfortable for him too, or is it something that's pretty quick and I can go overnight and come back? Um, but yeah, it really has just become about him and about being a mom, and I know though that there will be a time that I can go and step back into to being having the career be more of a priority. But it's very different. It's I think it'll always, with no matter how old your child is, they're always going to be, your priorities and your independence completely changes. And in a good way, a wonderful way. I have I have no hesitation and regret in any way of waking up every day as early as he might wake up and thinking like, this is what it's all kind of led up to, and singing. And I sing with him. I sing, little kid songs all day, and that makes me very happy. So maybe there'll be a children's project at some point. It kind of just opens up a possibility again of a different priority and a different focus of what really is important and what matters. So it's a different life, but it's a very good one. I mean, that was such a wonderful surprise when I heard about the nomination, and I think it really is true. People say all the time, it just feels good to get nominated, and it's not even about the win. And of course, you'd think, well, of course, if you win, that would be even more amazing. But it really was just such a thrill to be included and to be able to go to the show. And I'd never been to anything like the red carpet and all these superstars, and and you kind of think like, well, they're not there, there's no way they're going to call my name. And then my friend Taylor actually said, he's like, but right before when they list those names, there's a split second where you're like, oh my God, what if they call my name? And then they don't, and then you're like, oh, of course they weren't going to call my name. But it's still, you get the butterflies, and it's exciting, and you're just happy to be in that family. And I remember seeing Diane Reeves right after they announced us, and everybody was moving to the main show, and she said, this is for all of us. We're all family, and that's absolutely very true. There's the community of singers. I know all of them, as friends and supporters. So there's no that's again this the whole competitive nature just doesn't exist. I've never played a part of it, but yeah, I mean, Grammy is that's awesome if you can if you can get that kind of recognition. So we'll see. It may not ever happen again, or maybe it's the beginning of being in that club, so to speak. But it's great. I mean, I'm very grateful for that. I don't. I think it's apples and oranges. I think they both have a benefit and their limitations. And like what we did with the last album was to make a live album, which was kind of the best of both. So you have the energy of the live show and the audience, and just it's just in that moment, and whatever's going to happen just happens. And but you also after the fact have the control to get the levels right, and everything mixed, and you could kind of rearrange an order if you want to, and so all those fun things that happen in a studio where you actually have the control. But yeah, I mean, I love both, and I would love to be able to do both and to continue to. So as much as I talk about being a mom, it's definitely that music is there and will always be there, and it just changes, in a different way. But it's it still feels just as good to get out there and perform or go in the studio and record, and I love all of that, and that's what I plan to continue to do. For a recording, I would like to have as much control as I can. I like to be there every step of the way. Um, there's much work that an engineer can do, um, that the artists don't necessarily have to be involved in, but I do like to be there and to hear the possibilities are, and to be a part of that artistic process till the very end. It's fun. It's fun to be there, and yeah, everything that I've ever done, I've kind of been very very hands on with the music, and then also the visual too. I come from a family of visual artists as well. So knowing, I might not know how to do it, but working with whoever is doing the visual, and I think that's just as important as the music, is how it's presented and what it looks like. And I'm very I like make little details. I want to choose the font, and is it mostly lowercase? I love lowercase. With the look of that, or different layout ideas. So up to this point, I've been able to be a part of that, which is I feel really lucky about. It's everything is living and breathing and very strong. I think there's all kinds of there's room for everybody. It seems like there's still very traditional sounding singers that are keeping that sound and that technique and that approach alive and well, and that's necessary. And then there's other singers that are opening up different doors, and pushing boundaries, and incorporating different kinds of sounds. So it's exciting to hear and be a part of. And most of what I'm doing, in the work that I'm able to do now, is to teach at Manhattan School of Music. So that's working with Theo Blackman and Kate McGarry, two other really wonderful singers. And so it feels good to hear the next generation of singers and what their ideas are, and trying to kind of be a guide and a mentor in whatever way to kind of help them realize their musical dreams. So it feels like there's all kinds of of singers with gifts that are just eager and ready, and it's nice to be a part of that and to help them along. it goes back to that word that I used earlier. It's just about honesty. It's just really my what I am able to offer is kind of helping by just sharing what where I've come from and what I've done to just really tap into what's already there, to realize what you already have inside of you, and just really have your voice, your singing voice, reflect your speaking voice. So there isn't this suddenly this character that comes out that isn't connected to who you are as an honest human being. So what I, my approach to and my offering and what my advice would really just to be doing that soul searching and that tapping into to who you are, finding out who you are and what you want to do, and connecting that to your art, and everything else just kind of finds itself. I think the repertoire, the choices, all of that, the musicians you play with, everything will make sense if you're just open to the purity and the most genuine and the most honest sound that you can possibly have in your voice. So it's something that kind of it sounds simple and very straightforward, and then it can be really one of the hardest things to, and the longest processes and journeys to be a part of. It can take years and years, to really get to. So, and maybe we never really finish it. There's always more to do because we're always changing, and who we are today is different from 5 years ago. So it's like figuring out the method and then continuing that practice for forever. It was really just about that realization that I didn't have to imitate someone else. I didn't have to sound like someone else to be me. It was realizing that, okay, I can, like I mentioned, musical theater earlier on, and it's as much as I loved that style and I'm so influenced by it. It was whenever I would sing it, you play a character, you play a role, which I love. That's another thing. If I couldn't sing, I would love to, something with acting and character, and that's always been a thrill. I haven't tapped into that as much as I've wanted to in life, but so I love that. But at the same time, it's not me. You're kind of acting, so to speak. So it was realizing that the what's the most natural way I could sing, and so how do I speak, and how can I just have my speaking kind of just melt right into to the way that I would sing. So it was realizing that the most pure, honest way to sing, and then doing a lot of kind of finding that spirituality in my voice and my life as well. And that can be whatever you believe in, but just knowing that there's something bigger, and that kind of helped me to just be comfortable with life and the way that everything was going, because all of your life reflects in your art too. So um, doing a lot of that and just kind of sticking to my gut feeling about who I was and what I thought that I could and should sound like, and being supportive and finding the community of other artists, other musicians, to instrumentalists to play with, other vocalists to sing with, or just be supportive and be friends with, and so just having a positive attitude about the art, and again, not ever falling into playing the game of there being any kind of competition. I mean, it only exists if you play the game of it. So all of that, it is, again, it's something that you can kind of have this. Here's the step-by-step method of the way to go, and it isn't really like that. You have there's ways to kind of there's advice to be given, but I think everyone's path of their own soul searching and finding their voice and their sound is really their own to do. You know. I first started to sing. I started to study jazz privately right out of high school with Tierney Sutton, and we up before I sang with her, I would just learn solos by ear and sing them. So it was first imitation with improvisation, just learning learning Stan Getz solo on Desafinato was one of the first solos I ever learned. So hearing something like that, and then with Tierney, we would sing along with Aebersold cassettes. This was back, 90s, where it was mostly on cassette. And I hear my son waking up, so we might hear him. But yeah, I would sing with her, and a lot of it was, the method was really by ear. Every once in a while, we'd go, to the keyboard and she'd help me figure out what, a method as far as a technical method. But really, what I've like to share is so much of what I've done is just by feel and by ear. And we would trade phrases over changes, and she would teach me a song by singing with the Aebersold, singing the melody a few times, and I would learn by ear. After, by the end of the track, I'd learn the melody. We had each traded. Maybe I'd develop some kind of solo method, and then we move on, and she would just teach me song after song in this way. And it was really just this really sisterly one-on-one kind of time. So she is like my big sister in this. But it's a great way to learn. And then, I think you can only do that for so long. And then it is necessary to go down and to learn piano or to study with somebody who can teach and develop these different other methods. But so much can be done if you have and develop your ear. There's probably so many. But something that pops in my head, it relates to Tierney Sutton, and it was something that I believe that Kate McGarry said to her, and then Tierney said to me. She shared with me. So Kate is a great friend, and she's a fellow teacher at the Manhattan School of Music. They had some conversation where, Kate was talking about, how a lot of us as singers, performers, you can get nervous and get butterflies and get kind of worried about about performing in front of people, and it can really get in the way for a lot of singers. And she said, but the audience, they're rooting for you. And that was her line. They're rooting for you, and they want you to succeed. They want you to sound good, and they're coming to your show, and they've spent their time and their energy and their cover charge, and they're there to enjoy. And sometimes you get caught up thinking like everyone's there and they're going to judge me, or they're kind of waiting to, okay, what do you got? Let me see. And instead of the attitude of like, no, they're there because they're really hoping that you do well. So it puts a nice ease, to the concept of performing, and knowing that it's more about just sharing your gifts with other people that happen to be there that want to listen, So that's helped. I never really got caught up in being anxious about performing, but that's helped me to just, breathe into it and know that it's all just about this shared experience. And it's more about being equal. It's not that, anyone there because you're on a stage literally like above everybody, that you are above anybody. It's just, this is what I do and this is what I have to offer, and you're here to listen. So I have thought of that line a lot and shared that line, because that could be the biggest issue that comes out with students is getting nervous before they sing. Well, there's some touring coming up. A nice event is the Capital Jazz Cruise. That's like the end of October to the beginning of November. So that's being on a cruise ship for a week and performing, and I can bring my whole family. And so those are the kind of tours that work for us, is where we can bring the whole crew. But there's Tillery. We have an album that should be released very soon. Just finishing that up. And I'm always doing different projects with my own group, or a lot of duo with Lionel Lueke, duo with Alan Hampton, duo with Taylor Eichste. So I can't say yet like what the next album that is under my name, what it will be, but there's all kinds of ideas. But for now it's just starting it up at Manhattan School. Wow, already in a few weeks, couple weeks, and just continuing, just continuing being a mom and singing in any way that I can. But there's anything that I'm up to doing will be on the website, and I'll be happy to share what's going on. Yeah. So I always want to say thank you to people that have supported me and that have kind of allowed me to take a little step back and be a mom, and I'll get back out there. But there's always going to be music to be made and to share.